just on the other side of this page, I was just talking about something that I could expose to you, and within like 10 minutes, you'd be like, right? Well, it's not even going to take 10 minutes. It's going to actually take about 10 seconds. Inner resistance, right? That's something that we all deal with as athletes, and unless you're really at a high level of training or you're in a sport that requires hundreds of seconds, you know, the differences between you and the next person's are hundreds of seconds. But in track, we deal with these terms all the time. So here's the thing, inner resistance is actually a real thing that every person is dealing with. And I'm talking about physical resistance. I'm not talking about inner resistance of the heart and the mind. We'll get there later. So right now, what I'm talking about is your body actually holding you back, right? So we all know that we experience some tightness in general, right? So everyone knows what tightness means, but what the average person doesn't understand is that the human body is not very efficient at producing power and force, right? It might be able to generate it, but let me just say this, it's not efficient at transferring it to things. So training is what we're doing to actually increase the force and to make it more efficient at transferring it. Whether you swing, whether you pedal a bike, or whether you run, we are transferring strength, power to whatever it is that we're doing, whatever mechanical movement, whatever mechanism, bike, whatever it is. So whether you got two wheels or whether you got two legs, if you don't deal with this inner resistance that's natural, right? We all naturally have about 20-25% of inefficiency that as a trained athlete, you're trying to minimize that inefficiency. So it's not just about, oh yeah, I got tight hamstrings or my hips are tight. Someone else might say that, and that's generally what they're talking about. But on some level, you need to know you're missing about 20-25% of the transfer of strength and power and speed, and everything you already have is being resisted. Why? Because the body has to be tuned up to the point that it actually can minimize this breakdown or the diminishing or the transfer, right? To the point that maybe you lose 10%. That person would be a lot faster. So when I told you on the other page that I could actually make you faster within about 10 minutes, and it wouldn't require any working out, it wouldn't require any gym time, wouldn't require any expensive equipment. So what I'm gonna do is break down how you actually can make a difference with this. Okay, so I mentioned there's 3 important things that you need to know. So here's the coaching, here's the training, here's what I told you I would give you. Okay, so the idea is this. You got 3 things. First thing is you got to make sure that the body has proper range of motion, ROM. Put a pin in it. Second thing we have to do is make sure that the brain is set up to communicate to the body. We got the relationship between the hamstring and the quad. So right now the leg is fully extended. So when I raise my leg up in this position right here, these muscles stretched out. See, they got longer. This muscle under here, it got shorter. So these two work together, shortening and lengthening, and both are doing the opposite. So they have a relationship. Now, if this muscle is too tight, which means that the muscle that straightens the leg out can't fully engage because this muscle is resisting it, okay? So now think about that. Let's go to the glute and the hip flexor. Same thing. I'm pedaling, I'm running. When I go to apply that pressure, I want to use that glute. So that muscle's contracting, it's getting shorter. This is lengthening, but this is tight. And we all know we're in this position most of the day, this muscle gets tight. So the glutes can't really fire. I know you've heard people talk about glute activation and are your glutes firing properly and all this other stuff. Well, that's what they're talking about. So at the end of the day, and we're talking about hundreds of seconds going into the first turn, you think that doesn't make a difference? Of course it makes a difference. And the first thing that people do when they start working out is start doing, bench press or push-ups or pull-ups or something like that. Maybe they're doing core, maybe stability training. But most of them skip right over the fact that mobility is the number one way is to make them mobile. Make them mobile, all right? So let's go over the 3 things that makes a difference. First thing you got to do is have the proper dynamic warm-up routine. This is something that doesn't just warm the body up, but it makes sure that your brain is actually communicating to the body and it's optimizing its movements, which means you don't just do old school, jumping jacks, right? You actually would do something that is, multi-planar. It's engaging the quad, glute, core, rotating, stability, all that stuff, dynamic movement. So I'm not going to get directly into what I'm going to have you to do, but I'm telling you right now that there's about 6 to 10 different dynamic moves that once you know them, I've been doing the same ones for 20 years, okay? So that's the first thing, dynamic warm-up, okay? The next thing you want to move on to is you would think it'd be stretching, but it's not stretching yet, not if you really want to nail it. If you really want to nail it, you want to get into what TPT is. Okay, so if you've seen one of these before, anything like it, a roller, you could use softball, you could use a lacrosse ball. So I'm going to be showing you some strategies that you can use to actually release your muscles before you stretch. Trigger point therapy means that I'm going to actually actively go in and release certain muscle groups, because with overuse and overtime and injury and all the other things that occurred, and we're not addressing it, you can't just address it with a stretch. These muscles start developing little teeny Charlie horses, which are like trigger points. And the problem with that is it shortens the muscle, and the problem with that is it interrupts the communication. So let's just keep it real simple right now. When your brain says go and a muscle has triggers in it, there's a little hesitation in there. Let's just put it that way. The last thing is having a stretch strategy. That means that you're not just or just getting a list of stretches and banging them out. No, you're actually going from a dynamic warm-up that's specific to moving towards trigger point therapy, maybe 3 or 4 different things you're doing to specifically release specific muscle groups, so then you can move in and stretch those muscle groups and restore the length. And then beyond that, you can do your exercise or corrective exercise strategies, which I have all that. So now you might be asking, well, where's that information, right? Well, I mean, come on, we're talking about a good 25-30 minutes of coaching, which isn't a lot of time. However, I couldn't do it right here, right now. So what I'm going to have you to do, remember how you put your name down here and click the button? You're going to do the same thing, but it's a $10 charge this time. Why? Here's the deal. Equivalent to about the cost of 3 cups of coffee, but here's the thing, you know it's priceless when you have this information. The reality is, when your competitor sees this page, if they click this button and you didn't, they're going to have the information you don't. They're going to do what you're not doing. And if that person is beating you on the track, you're going to be sick to your stomach when you realize that this person is literally beating you on the information that you should be getting right now. Click the button, get the training, 10 minutes per day, and I'm actually going to show you how to measure your improvement so that I can prove to you that this method is highly effective. And how do we do that? As a bonus, I'm going to throw in a training that you'll be able to use to kind of measure your improvement. I won't even get into that right now. If you've heard about it, then you know that 100% of the people who've engaged in that training, 100% have actually improved their pedal speed, RPMs, or revolutions per second. I myself went from 219 to 263 RPMs, which is maybe 4.5 revolutions per second. I mean, it's getting up there. So my point is, I'm going to show you exactly how to maximize your training and show you how it makes a difference on your bike. But right now, what we really have to do, we have to unlock those hips. We got to get you going. We got to get everything fired up and ready to go. I'm ready to go. I don't know about you, but what I need you to do right now is to make that $10 deposit towards your mobility mastery. Then I can get you joined into our 7-day challenge. 7 days, 10 minutes a day. And at the end of those 7 days, you will see marked improvements in your RPMs, miles per hour, reduction of time on the track from your increased mobility. What you're going to get, just so I'm clear, 45 minutes of coaching. That's a straight up personal training session, because if you were standing right in front of me, it would cost you $60 to $80 for a session. 45 minutes of step by step. And when I say step by step, I break it down. I show you do this and then do this next. That's 7 days of support, 7 days of accountability, 7 days of daily interaction with you being able to ask all the questions you have and getting questions answered, and you'll be receiving updated information on a daily basis and keep you inspired and to move you through your process. All right, so now it's time to reserve your space, because this starts this upcoming Sunday evening. We launch. So it's very important that if you want in, you reserve your space today, okay? I'm limited to 30 spots. So if you want one of those spots, reserve your space today, and we're gonna start Sunday evening. Monday is the first day of mobility. I like to call that Mobility Monday.